Hey folks, Steve here with a little micro update for you on the Korea Fire and Ice playthrough number 2 status. I am showing the results at the end of the July month. So we are just getting past the fifth turn, going into the sixth turn. We've not yet started the August monthly turn. But so far, it is obviously, as you would expect, a very good uh, situation for the communists so far. Um, so far, just there's no point in really talking too deeply into what's going on in the game because it's kind of what you would expect, right? The communists start the game, they beat up on the South Koreans, and then the U.S. starts to come in. Uh, the rule changes around objectives haven't been hugely impactful yet, but already there is a change in the game tempo, which has been that the uh, you don't have the Seoul problem. Seoul train is different. So the communists managed to take Seoul in the first turn. They still were stuck a little bit south of Seoul, taking out a UN unit that was very stubborn and stuck around for a little while due to die rolls and other things. And so they have revealed the objective markers that started up there, but they have not yet claimed them because they were focused on objectives that had come in down south. They had eventually taken Taejon. They had taken this port, and they had started to push into the perimeter space over here, sort of the last uh, bastion for the UN forces. And things started to look bad for the communists as the UN was getting rolling with its air and it was bringing in these units. But some twists of fate have kind of caused the UN situation, the UN player situation, to get very bad. um, some attacks did not go as well as they were hoping to, and that resulted in some pretty nasty losses. You can see there's several disrupted units over here. Um, Several attempts to try to isolate and destroy communist units failed due to well placed reaction movement, or reserve movement, I should say. I had made sure as the communist player to allow for some of that, some reserves to be used for that purpose, but there are some opportunity costs to that. So there's still a little bit of a potential snafu going on over here where the communists have to contend with some of those UN forces. Over here, there's just some attacks that didn't go well, and there have been a number of maximum minimum die rolls. So the UN player has a number of poor units on the board. They did have some elite units for a time. The communists have a lot of elite units, a lot of guard units are on the board. So they've sort of lucked out from that perspective well. So the UN just, I think, have had a string of bad luck. Right now, the UN player is out of replacement points. That's just after their final attempts at various attacks failed, and they had to chew into their replacements to the degree that they are again out of replacements at the moment. The communist victory points are up to oh boy, there's a glare, you can't quite see it. It's 14. They have 14 victory points at the moment. Um, some of that has come from uh, inflicting losses on the UN player. The UN was willing to give up some victory points to keep units on the board, or at least attempt to slow down the communists. Um, and they really want to avoid losing US units because, as we saw in the previous playthrough, once US units start coming off the board, that's just really bad news over the life of the game. So it's definitely, keep U.S. units on the board as much as possible. If that means losing victory points, at least for the moment, we'll make that sacrifice, knowing that foreign aid and intervention will make up the difference over time for the UN player. What I wasn't counting on were such poor die rolls recently, really out there on the bell curve, where the UN was rolling one, twos, or threes, and the communists were often rolling eight, nines, and tens. Great leaders end up being incredibly powerful because, it's like, hey, if you roll poorly, might as well roll again, and that has turned some combats from what would be a communist loss to a communist victory, and critically chipping away at some of those UN replacements. Um, I think the last game we just didn't have that happen. The UN rolled well enough that they didn't really go too low on replacements, and they were able to operate quite effectively. I think here they're definitely feeling worse off right now, and I think it's going to be tough. I think for the UN to start making a comeback, just because uh, because they're low on replacements, they can't afford to lose many combats, and because now they have disrupted units, they have some routed units over here. They've managed to avoid snafu markers being placed. Amazingly, every time I drew one was a red one, so they didn't get it. Um, with just that in mind, it's like, what what's going to happen this next turn, right? I mean, the monthly phase will empower the UN player for certain, but the communists are going to be able to make some use of. They're going to get some use out of cracking the line here. They might be able to take out the 24th Infantry Division, or at least put a major hurt on them, force them to retreat all the way back this way. Even these guys aren't in the best of shape, and so there's just a lot of weakness in this northern part of the new Pusan perimeter is like right here to right here, so it's pretty close to the historical perimeter, but that perimeter may not hold very long, and if the communists can get lucky within the first couple of turns of the next month, we could see the UN on a major back foot. Now, the one important thing that happened right at the end was that with an additional activation, the South Korean there was a South Korean activation that managed to sail way past the communists, and they retook this port, which could be very important, right? We could put reinforcements in that port, and actually have a way to catch the communists off guard without a naval invasion. So the communists are going to have to decide, like, are they going to try to take it back or what? And critically, when this unit moved over here and we got to the end of the turn, there was a communist unit. The one that was here in Taejon was over here. He had to sprint over here to cover and ensure that Taejon was defended, because it looked like this 24th Division, Infantry Division, might break through, and we had a victory point marker there that was going to be at risk of not being able to be claimed, and even at risk to be taken off the board, period. And so the communist player had to prioritize getting that victory point and claiming them, getting 5. It was a 5 VP marker. They lucked out on that one. There was also a 5 VP marker here, but they had to leave, right? They left it empty, and that last move, they just didn't have anything else that could cover that movement, and this guy sailed up, and the UN player removed the communist objective marker there. So I think now that I've removed the gaminess, the objective marker system makes sense, because it is being based around important locations. This port, this city, the UN player, amongst the couple of turns, got to the point where they had removed some communist objectives that started down here. They didn't get rid of the Pusan one. They may not ever really need to, but they ended up adding one here in this town where there was a communist unit, because it was an easy one to pick. They could pick that one. Now, Gwangju, unfortunately, has just not become relevant enough to put objective markers on, but the communist player could certainly try to do it, and that remains an open option for them. Either that, or they're going to start peeling off objective markers that they flipped up here. There's 4 victory points between these two markers up here. So on the board, the communists have 14 victory points. They could, within a few turns, be up to 18 victory points. And then if they can hurt the UN player enough to force the victory points into 21 victory points, they could win. I mean, the communist situation is such that like total victory is a possibility. Now it's unlikely because the UN is about to get a whole lot more support and units and everything else over the next several turns. But it is a possibility. Like it is feasible, and the communists could actually win. And right now, given the board position and the victory points and where things are at and the objectives, it feels a lot better in line with itself. Like it makes sense that maybe the North Koreans are going to win, and it's going to be because they stymied the UN response. And if the US can't make a difference in Korea, then yeah, the communists might win the conflict. That the South Koreans capitulate, and the U.S. forces have seen defeat on the peninsula, which has happened so far. Their grand counterattack, which is probably premature, I'll admit, went very poorly. And maybe this is just an issue of um, maybe when we just look at it, the first playthrough I had an early Allied counteroffensive that was very good and helped the game a lot for the Allies, the UN player. I thought I could do the same thing here. I turned out to be wrong. The luck was against me. I should have waited maybe, and been more cautious and just held this perimeter. And then with the UN replacements and reinforcements over the next month or two, then I could properly counterattack and do the naval invasion and all of that kind of stuff. Um, but I bit off more than I can chew, and now the UN might be on the back foot. So it's interesting. The game is interesting right now to see kind of where we can go, what the options are. Um, all that kind of stuff is still relevant and interesting for the game. Um, so yeah, we'll see what happens. And the best part of this short video for you is that Seoul does not have any weird gaminess going on with it right now. If I had ignored capturing all the hexes of Seoul, I still could not place a victory marker there because Seoul would be north of the most southern, or I'm sorry, it would have been north of the most northern UN unit. So it would have been behind our front line, and it would have been ineligible to place an objective marker with my proposed rule change. So nothing to worry about. There's nothing keeping you from just taking all of Seoul. Maybe you could have waited to take Seoul and put more objective markers or something like that. But the UN player kind of wouldn't let that happen. So there's a certain degree where it's like even an important city like Seoul, you're only going to get so many objective markers out of it in a given time frame. And there's still a little bit of an oddity that like, okay, what happens if you're doing so well that you're taking these cities without, you're taking them faster than you can place objective markers. And I think that just changes your objective choice, right? Do you reveal? Do you claim? Maybe it's better to just place for a while and get stuff out here and make sure you've taken it. And I had sort of done that down here, where I had made sure I had a unit in that port, I had a unit in Taejon, I had units down over here before I revealed anything. Um, and I was even incentivized to try to keep placing objective markers. So you're trying to time it right. Like, do I have enough time to get these victory point markers? Now, for the communists, it might be a good idea to be like, yeah, I'm going to place a marker in Gwangju, and I expect that, or maybe I'm going to place one in, this town here, with the expectation that I'm going to eliminate, this area, these guys over here, or maybe I put an objective marker here, or maybe it needs to be further back, like Taegu. There was an objective marker here, but the UN player had removed it with one of their actions, right? So I think the whole tug of war of where objectives are, where you can remove them, where you can pick them up, where you can place them. So far I haven't had any issues with my proposed changes. They have certainly helped smooth out how I'm looking at that system. I'm also playing with some hindsight, but I think it works better so far. And because I'm doing the thing where the UN player can't remove an objective marker that was just placed, it at least still provides some initiative to the communist player or the player who's on offense to still get to try to do something for objective points. So far, so good. This 15-minute video, maybe even longer than I originally intended. So here we are at the end of turn 5. So far, so good. It could just end up this game ends early with a communist victory because of me doing just very well down here. That could happen. Not necessarily a balance problem. I was overeager as the UN. I got punished for it. I think that's a valid game situation. So, yeah, so far so good, guys. I'll do another video maybe in a couple of days or whenever I get to a good point to show what else has happened in the game. Could be, it might not just be 5 turns later. It might be 10 turns later. It'll just be when I get to a point that's worth talking about, I guess. So thanks for watching, guys. Hope this is a quick, enjoyable video for you rather than a big long one. As I work through the replay, the playthrough number 2, let me know what you think in the comment section below. I appreciate the dialogue and the engagement with folks. So until next time, guys, take care, keep gaming.